You might assume that to make £5,000 a month from property, you need to own tons of houses or have millions in the bank. Well, you'd be wrong. The truth is, there are proven systems to scale faster and build a property portfolio that pays you every single month. And I've spoken with over 1,000 property investors over the last 5 years, and this is the one strategy that is proven to help you quickly replace your income. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how it works, the strategies, the numbers, and most importantly, how you can do it yourself. So the first thing we need to mention is that for the average investor, there are two paths that you can take. The first option is what most people think of when they hear property investment. You buy a house or a flat and you rent it out to one person or family, and every single month they pay you rent. This is known as a buy-to-let. The second option works a little differently. Instead of renting out the whole property to one tenant, you rent it out to multiple people, each paying separately for their own space. This is known as a house of multiple occupation, or a HMO. But how do we actually use these two strategies to get to the £5,000 a month mark? And which strategy is going to be the best for you? Well, we'll compare each one side by side to let you know which is best for your situation. The first thing you need to ask yourself is, how much do I really need to get started? Most people wildly overestimate how much capital it takes to build serious property income. If you tried to buy all the properties and hit £5,000 a month in one go, then yes, you'd probably need a small fortune, but you probably don't have that kind of cash lying around. So what actually is the alternative? There's a smarter approach that experienced investors use. So let's say you go with the buy-to-let route. You're typically looking at a property around £190,000 in a strong investment area. But instead of buying any £190,000 property, you find a similar house for £120,000 that needs a full renovation. So let's say you buy cash and then you pay £6,000 on the stamp duty, £2,500 on the legal fees and some mortgage costs. Then you set aside £35,000 for the renovation, bringing your total investment to £163,500. So once you've completed renovations, the property might be valued at 190k or maybe even more. This means that you can take out a new mortgage based on the higher value, allowing you to pull out most of your initial investment that you used to go on to the next property. This strategy is called buy, refurb, refinance, and it's how investors build big portfolios without needing millions upfront. The same principle applies for HMOs, though the numbers look a little bit different. With an HMO, you're looking for a larger property that can be converted into multiple rentable rooms, ideally a bare minimum of 3, but really 4 as a minimum. And then you can turn it into a 5, 6, 7, 8 bed HMO. So you find a £200,000 property, again, you buy cash, you then spend a further £14,000 on legals, stamp duty, and all the setup costs. And because you're converting it into a high-end HMO, you'll need about £100,000 for the full conversion and all the nice furnishing. And that brings your total investment to £314,000. Once completed, the property is then revalued at £400,000, and just like with the buy-to-lets, you refinance to get some of your money back out to reinvest in your next deal. This is why your starting budget is so important, because with the right approach, that initial investment becomes the foundation of your portfolio. And by the way, if you want a detailed calculator to run the numbers on both buy-to-lets and HMOs, you can download them using the property investment playbook link in the description. Now, after you've got your budget sorted, you need to understand how tenants play into your choice between buy-to-let and HMOs, because the property itself won't pay you any money, but the tenants will. So imagine that you went with the buy-to-let route. You find a great property, get in a tenant that's maybe a small family, a couple, or a working professional. They sign a 6 to 12 month contract, and once they're in, they treat the place like it's their own home. They put down their roots, maybe enroll their kids into the local schools, and often stay for many years. That means fewer void periods, consistent rental income, and less frequent need to find new tenants over and over again. Now, let's imagine that you went with an HMO instead. Instead of one household renting the entire property, you'd be renting it out to individuals on an individual room basis to multiple tenants. Now, you might have a bunch of professionals in their own rooms paying their own rent separately. Now, whilst that means that your total income will actually be increased, it also means that you're likely to get higher tenant turnover. Some tenants stay for a year or two, some only stay for 6 months. And when someone moves out, you need to fill that room again. And while the higher turnover might sound like a disadvantage, there's an important trade-off to actually consider. With multiple tenants in one property, even if one room was empty, you're still collecting rent from the others. And if tenant turnover concerns you, then there's a solution to make HMOs even more stable, and that's going down the route of social housing contracts. If you rent your HMO through a social housing provider, they'll take it on for maybe like a 5-year contract, guaranteeing you rent for the whole period with no vacancies whatsoever. So the key takeaway here is pretty simple. Buy-to-lets offer more stability with less turnover, while HMOs offer higher income with more frequent tenant changes. But your choice depends on which of these factors matters most to you. Now imagine that you're at home on a Sunday morning, maybe watching a bit of TV, kicking your feet up, and then your phone starts to ring. You answer it and it's one of the tenants, and there's a leak in the kitchen. And before you even have time to process that, another one calls in and it's a different tenant, and they've lost the key to their room. And just when you think that that's the last of it, someone else calls you to tell you that their Wi-Fi's gone down. Now this is what it can be like managing HMOs if you don't have the right setup in place. Because when you have multiple tenants under one roof, you're not just dealing with one household, you're dealing with several, each with their own issues, expectations, and tenancy agreements. Now compare that with a buy-to-let. Maybe you've got one family renting the property and there's a small minor issue. From experience, if it's a loose door handle or a slightly blocked drain, the chances are they'll just fix it themselves instead of just calling you for everything. And that's why buy-to-lets tend to be more hands-off. You get fewer tenants, which means fewer issues and fewer headaches. But here's the thing. It doesn't have to be you dealing with any of this, because whether you go for HMOs or buy-to-lets, the level of involvement depends entirely on how you decide to set it up. If you don't want to deal with the tenant calls, the late night emergencies, or constant admin, you can hire a property management company to handle everything for you. They'll take care of vetting the tenants, collecting the rent, handling maintenance, keeping an eye, making sure the property is just running smoothly. And yes, they'll take a cut of the profits, but in return, you get your time back and you get the peace of mind. So the real question isn't just which strategy is better, it's how involved do you want to be? Because while some investors are happy to be hands-on, if your goal is true passive income, the right systems make all the difference. And speaking of systems, how many properties do you actually need to reach that £5,000 a month mark that we spoke about? So let me break it down. With buy-to-let properties, you're typically looking around £300 a month profit from each house. That means that you need 17 properties to reach £5,000 in monthly income. Now that might sound like a lot, and it is, but don't let the number put you off. Most successful investors don't build their portfolio overnight. It's a process of using the right strategies to grow steadily without overextending yourself. With HMOs, however, the numbers look very, very different. A well-structured 6-bed HMO can generate about £1,200 a month in profit. That means you only need 4 of these to hit your £5,000 a month target. And this is where buy, refurbish, and refinance is so important, because whether you choose buy-to-lets or HMOs, you're not going to be able to buy all the properties at once. Instead, you'll need to start with one property, renovate it to increase its value, refinance, pull out your initial investment as much as possible, and then use that same pot of money to go again. So this brings us on to the final piece of the puzzle. Which strategy should you go with? And the answer depends on your long-term plan. Because while both paths can actually get you to that £5,000 a month, they work on very different timescales. With high cash flow per property, you need 4 HMOs instead of 17 buy-to-lets, but the speed comes at a cost. A higher upfront investment, more regulations, a higher level of involvement, and you'll need to be ready to manage tenant turnover or have at least a solid management system in place. Buy-to-lets, on the other hand, take longer but come with fewer moving parts. They offer stability, predictable income, and less hands-on management, making them ideal for anybody who wants just the simple, hands-off, long-term approach. So it comes down to this. Choose HMOs if your priority is reaching your income goal as quickly as possible, and choose buy-to-lets if you value the simplicity, safety, and comfortable long-term approach. But remember, there is no better strategy here. The right choice depends on your specific situation. Start with one property, whether it's a buy-to-let or a HMO, and focus on executing that first property deal properly. Buy it at a discount, add value through the renovation, refinance or pull out as much money as you possibly can, and then just go again. Because ultimately, that's how you'll reach £5,000 a month, one property at a time, using the strategy that best fits your goals, your timeline, and your resources. But knowing which strategy to choose is just the first step, really. Before you put down that deposit on your first property, there is actually a crucial step that you need to take to protect your investment. So check out this video next, where I break down the 31 essential steps that you must take before ever buying a property in 2025.